Truth is making a comeback. America's Top Stories with Lisa K. Donner.
A bad situation on our southern border got even worse this week with the arrest of the de facto head of the group known as UCP, United Constitutional Patriots. The man was arrested on a 2-year-old gun charge and thrown into prison, where he was promptly beaten up by inmates and sent to the hospital. Joining me now to discuss the situation in New Mexico and the latest with Larry Hopkins is Tim Donner. Tim and I have actually been married for 33 years, and believe it or not, we still talk to each other.
Yes, we do.
Hi, Tim. Okay, can you tell me basically what happened to Mr. Hopkins today?
Well, it doesn't appear to be, by most reports, very complicated. He went to jail, and word had spread among the other prisoners that he was considered a white nationalist, a fascist, part of a militia that was out to gang up and brutalize immigrants coming from south of the border. So once that word spread, it really was quite predictable that he would get attacked in prison. And in fact, he wound up in the hospital with broken ribs and apparently, according to his assistants in his organization, thoroughly demoralized by this whole chain of events.
So there has been some talk that Mr. Hopkins' arrest was actually a political arrest. What have you determined about this situation?
I think it's pretty obvious that it was political. They arrested him on a charge from 2 years ago that they could have gotten him on any time, but decided to go for it now, just when his group had sort of reached ahead in trying to assist the Customs and Border Patrol in basically surveying and being on the border and helping them with their work at in seizing immigrants coming over the border illegally. Their goal apparently has been simply to be sort of like citizens who would then make the equivalent of citizens' arrests of people who were in the country illegally. So what they're trying to do is basically just to assist the Customs and Border Patrol with what is undeniably a crisis. And I think the point of view of his organization is that if the Congress is going to do nothing to address the crisis on the border, then citizens like him will take matters into their own hands. And whether the law is on his side ultimately or not, we don't yet know, but it's clear. I mean, it's crystal clear that this was a political calculation to arrest him and throw him in prison. And I'm sure they probably didn't mind that he was beaten up in prison.
Do you believe, Tim, that, well, let's just say this. Who do you think put the FBI up to this in New Mexico?
Well, most likely the New Mexican governor, who is having a lot of trouble trying to control her populace now. They're not pleased about the fact that she is seeming to welcome immigrants, illegal immigrants from south of the New Mexican border in Mexico. And I don't know if you could say there's an uprising among the people in New Mexico, but they're very upset that swifter and sterner action is not being taken to control their border, because it's those people who live on the border in New Mexico and Texas and Arizona and California who are the ones who are paying the price for illegal immigration, while the rest of us say, well, we don't, but the Democrats are saying this is just a cooked up crisis. This is just something that Trump is ginning up in order to energize his base for the 2020 election. But if you look at the numbers of people coming across the border, about 4,000 a day, this is a legitimate crisis and could even be called, as President Trump has officially declared, a national emergency.
Do you think that basically Mr. Hopkins is in serious danger, and that if he was taken for a federal crime, why did they send him to a local jail? I mean, that's rather confusing to me. Or is this normal?
Well, he's been taken out of the hospital by marshals, apparently, who have custody of him. Last word we got. I suppose he's going to be targeted by pro-immigrant groups, pro-amnesty groups, pro-open borders groups. He will be targeted just as he was by the American Civil Liberties Union, which accused Hopkins' group of being a fascist, white nationalist militia, illegally detaining and kidnapping Central American families seeking asylum, innocently seeking asylum. The problem we've got, Lisa, is that now, unlike in past years with immigration, the illegals come over the border and they want to be seized by customs authorities because they want to seek asylum. They want to go through the process, which will keep them in the country. And most of the time, of course, they'll be granted court dates down the road, and so many of them never show up for court. And that's why you have the illegal immigration problem that we have now. 60% of the illegal immigrants here are simply overstaying their visas or came to the country legally but are still here illegally.
Do you believe the new Mexican governor set this up to cause this sort of powder keg? Because now we really have a political issue going on down there.
Well, it seemed that she wanted to make a statement, didn't it? I mean, there was no reason to arrest Mr. Hopkins otherwise. To say that some 2-year-old charge of a gun possession is enough to arrest him 2 years later, just when this crisis is coming to a head and just when the ACLU has targeted Mr. Hopkins as a fascist, white nationalist militia type who probably loves Trump, it's not a coincidence.
All right, Tim, thank you very much for your political analysis on the situation in New Mexico, which seems to be getting worse by the day. Thanks so much.
You're welcome, Lisa.
Truth is making a comeback. Visit us at libertynation.com.